Check it. Was this posted 2 days ago when I was here? No. Well, maybe it was. I didn't see it, but looked online, made sure it was open, made the trip all the way out here into the desert. Darn! Welcome to today's adventure of Luinator 59. I'm in Palm Springs, and as you can tell behind me, I'm looking at aircraft today. I'm down by the airport. Hear the rumble of the plane. We're right on the airport. As you can tell from the opening shot, yeah, that's a vintage aircraft, U.S. warcraft. And we're at a museum today that celebrates the Korean War, the Vietnam War, and the Cold War era aircraft. So, and I've never been here before, so this is a first time for me too. That's the Palm Springs Airport. And this is the road to war in Asia and the Pacific. Starting with the attack on Pearl Harbor. Ouch.
Find the wings.
I just got a wing in the head. See what hit me in the head. It's the Dauntless Scout.
Now it's up to the hot tamale. Ah, baby, we're going down. 10 seconds like a bat out of hell. Enemy bullets and flak float by like shambling. 8,000 feet over target. 5,000. 3,000. 2,000.
Dive bomber. Well, I could say I got hit in the head by a dive bomber. Oh, that's beautiful. There was a television show when I was growing up about World War II, and it had a whole fleet of Corsairs in it. I just thought that was the most beautiful plane. Oh, that's the Bearcat fighter, F-8F. Signing the surrender with Japan. Navy. My dad was in the Navy. He fought in World War II and in the Korean War. He was at the liberation of Manila. Miss Josephine. Missy, you are a pretty woman. Now, how'd you like to be 21 years old never been out of the United States, get shipped all the way across seas, to sit in one of those and fight people that you've never met. It kind of would suck.
All these people here who have volunteered to come over here, I'm very, very proud of them. They're all great Americans. What about that, huh?
Man, if this failed right here, the whole plane goes down.
In 1940, long before the United States entered World War II, a band of American airmen went into action against Japan. The aircraft they flew bore distinctive shark's teeth on the nose, a symbol which the Japanese came to fear. But to the world, they became known as the Flying Tigers.
There's the Corsair. I knew they'd have one of these in here. Look at that swept wing. I think this is one of the things I liked most about it, was that way that wing sweeps out in the center. The exhaust pipes from the engine go right underneath the wing. Such a beautiful plane.
With its bent wings and long nose, the U.S. Navy's Corsair was one of the most distinctive American fighters of World War II. As American forces battled across the Pacific and closed in on Japan, the versatile Corsair earned a fearsome reputation, both as a fighter and as a dive bomber. The Japanese called it Whistling Death. At sea, carrier-based Corsairs shot down hundreds of deadly kamikaze suicide planes. The Corsair was a revolutionary machine, full of new and advanced technology developed by the Vought company design team.
Now, this was my dad's gig during the war. He was on big destroyers and big ships. And he worked in the boiler rooms. So he was one of the last guys out when the ship sank, and he had 3 ships shot out from underneath him. When you work in the boiler room, you have to crawl out from the bottom. It's literally a maze, and when the ship's going down and there's explosions, I guess it's pretty scary. I was just having a conversation with that gentleman back there. He was on the Missouri when it came into Long Beach. When they were taking it out of mothballs, he worked at the Navy shipyard there. And he was telling me that when the masks were laying on the deck, because they had the masks laying down to bring it into port, I guess the masks were still radioactive and people were walking back and forward on it. And yeah, that's part of being one of the guys, I guess. We are still one of the only countries that has multiple aircraft carriers. Other countries, they have 1, 2. We got multiple. In fact, you could go down into San Diego and you could see a whole bunch of those aircraft carriers. In fact, you could even go onto a museum and walk the decks of one. Wow. I've never seen a cutaway of a submarine. Could you imagine living inside one of these things? Oh my gosh. Can you imagine trying to work in one of those things? Look at those big engines. Power plant and torpedoes forward and aft. Pretty cool. 1980s, our president Ronald Reagan started retrofitting all of our big battleships, brought them out of mothballs, turned us into a viable force again, and brought our country back from a very, very bad economic struggle. Kind of like the one we're coming back from right now. These battleships, they shoot these projectiles right here, and these things are like lobbing a Volkswagen bus or a Volkswagen through the air. My dad enlisted and was first shipped out to Pearl Harbor 2 weeks after it was bombed. He didn't have much of a boot camp. He just was sent. He was 17. His dad lied to get him in. But it was enough to help end this damn war, and it was a damn war too. Men fought bravely all the way across the Pacific to set it free. But it took two big blasts, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, to bring this war to an end.
Looking at a diorama of Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor is in the Hawaiian Islands, approximately 2,200 miles from San Francisco. It is home to our Pacific and Asiatic fleets. Ford Island, our naval air station, is in the center of Pearl Harbor. The channel entrance to the harbor is at the far end of the diorama. You are facing south. The time is 10 minutes to 8 on December 7th, 1941. It is a typically quiet Sunday morning when suddenly, from behind you, come the roar of aircraft engines. An Army radar operator had reported the aircraft while they were far out at sea. He was told it was a flight of B-17 beyond.
meanwhile, while they were fighting in Asia and all over the Pacific, they were also fighting in Europe. This whole side of the building right here is dedicated to the European front. Strapped in. Where's the straps? Oh well, I'll make it without straps. Yo, this whole thing's moving. I guess I'm so big, I'm shaking this whole thing. Wow. Ready to fly? Wonder if I could get it down the strip. Holy smoke. Boy, flying these old planes were antiquated, weren't they? And then you got your guy back here doing your radar and your radios, and you can see up, see out the windows. Oh, this would suck to have to be going to war in this. Let's see, what would be better, down here or up there flying it? I don't think any of these would be worth it. Man, I thank God so much I never had to go to war. And I've always thanked God for those who did fight wars, but good God, you don't want to go to war. So they ship you over in a big plane. You're in a cargo hatch. You land in Europe, and they're rushing you. And here's how you're going to get around. You're either going to drive one of those, sit in the back of one of those, and if you're very, very lucky, you get to sit in one of these and get shot at while you go through the countryside. I guess it's better than that than being just on that. Well, there you go. Be at war in a glider. Yo! Guess this is how they did reconnaissance, or I guess even troop movements. Oh God, in a glider.
This is part of the price paid for 6 and 7, June 1944. $1,662 troop carrier airplanes were dispatched in the first 24 hours of the assault. 43 were lost and 311 damaged by small arms fire. A lot happened here that cameras could never get.
Our Pathfinder teams, in 2 cases I know of, suffered heavy casualties. The light Ts, which we expected so much help from, were only 10% operational due to enemy fire. 50% of the resupply drop landed in enemy hands. Communications didn't exist to advise latest serials of changes in the enemy situation. Troop carrier operations and communications personnel should move with the first parachute or glider units. 89% of the horses and 50% of the wackos crashed in landing. But 75% of personnel and equipment were ready for combat.
Bad thing about wars is they're always young kids, too. I mean, always young kids. Women at war, still young kids. They don't deserve fighting wars of old people. In fact, the world doesn't deserve to be fighting wars. Oh, made from silk parachutes. Somebody got married in a silk parachute? Get out of town. That's crafty. Whew. And there's the bride. See, when you go to war, it's not just the young guys. It's not just the young women. It's everybody. It's the whole nation. In World War II, there were factories opened up everywhere to produce weapons for the war. And you worked in a factory. Men and women, tire plants were converted over, car dealerships or car manufacturers were turned into tank production and car production for the war effort. They had to conserve rubber. Kids collected metal because they needed all the resources they could get. It was literally stripping our country of all of its wealth to fight these wars. Eagle Squadron, American volunteers.
More American aid for Britain. This time it's manpower, for a number of United States airmen have volunteered for service with the RAF, with Colonel Sweeney of Lafayette Escadrille fame in command of the Eagle Squadron.
The men who have come over to form this squadron are all experienced pilots. They will be worthy of their forebearers. When the squadron is thoroughly trained, it will go to the front with the RAF squadrons, and I hope and I'm sure that it will hold up to the traditions.
Eagle Squadron is now being formed and is being made up entirely of American pilots. Some of these pilots have already seen action in fighter squadrons of the Royal Air Force and have brought down several enemy aircraft.
All these young Americans have come here at their own expense for the honor of fighting side by side with the Royal Air Force in wiping out the Nazi Luftwaffe from the skies. They're as keen as mustard on learning all our boys can teach them, and it won't be long before they're in action.
It's no wonder that they kissed and they hugged and they danced in the streets. And it seems like nowadays America has forgot what it's like to be at war, and they're so quick to jump to action. Of course, other countries are learning to take their war underground. We don't really see what's going on in the public's eye, or with the public's eye. We only see what sneaks out on the news every once in a while. But they say foreign powers are wickedly planning for our demise and constantly talking about how we're going to handle our defense. And of course, the best defense is a good offense. So we have people continuously planning for war here in the United States and abroad, which really sucks. I mean, you don't want war, but you have to plan for war. Miss Angela, Miss Angela, you were a flying beast. There is nowhere to hide if you're up there. Good gosh. Flying Fortress, definitely. Throughout the museum, there are wonderful volunteers here ready to help you and talk with you. And there's a lot of older guys that are sitting around talking about what it was like back in the day. Well, if you like where we went today, give us a like down below. Comment if you've got questions or want to say something. And if you're in Palm Springs, definitely come to the Philip and Lee Hickson Visitor Center, where they have a Silent Wars exhibit. Man. So if you're in and around Palm Springs and you have a few minutes to spend, this is a really good museum to come visit. It's a big display. There's a lot to see. There's things for the kids to do, and people love it. Hey, this is Lou Osted. Go ahead and click my face to subscribe or join us in one of these other videos right here. See ya.